You won't believe it, but I had a whole cinematic plan for how I was going to finish off Project Waterboard. But unfortunately, due to external circumstances, the timescale has been accelerated quite a bit. This build is going to be my traveling and at home service machine. Sometimes you need a full computer, like a full desktop system, to be able to do that effectively in the field. And for that respect, we've gone with the half X8, which I will get in focus, Evo land box, somewhere between a regular chassis and a test bench. So we'll switch on over to the wider view cam here. Unfortunately, I can't show you the front or the sides right now, but they easily slide off. And once you have all the panels off the machine, it starts to look a lot like a test bench. So yeah, it's not quite a perfect representation of a test bench. It definitely still has some things that aren't removable that a true test bench would be, but doesn't have as much radiator support as a true test bench, like a good one anyway. But yeah, it has all the important stuff, like a removable motherboard tray. That makes things a lot easier. It's got plenty of drive cages, so if I ever do decide to use this machine later as a more permanent fixture, I could easily transition it into some sort of storage server or something like that. And it's got enough cooling capacity between the meshed panels and the actually it has quite ample fan slots. The two ones at the very bottom, which you can just barely see the shadow of here, these are 80 millimeters, 280 mils down here, which is again a kind of a hard thing to find these days. I mean, not impossible. Noctua makes good 80 mils. There are decent 80 mils out there. They're just not something that most people buy these days. We also have dual hot swap bays, or two hot swap bays, what I mean to say. So that'll be perfect for data backup for clients, as I will be able to have those permanently wired up and ready to go whenever a hard drive needs to be put in. So I'm going to see if I can use this to get around the display problem. I considered buying a portable display, but I think I might be able to make it work with this. We'll test that later as well. Of course, the motherboard is still here, still chilling, still a little tiny for what it's about to mount into. You can see scale-wise, it's going to be, well, a little. It's gonna leave a little bit of space, but that's good. We want the working room. So yeah, we'll cut back once we have the remaining parts. And our box of supply is here. We'll borrow our little handy cam, and yeah, we'll take a look at what we got here. Not exactly sure what will be in this one. Okay. So a bunch of stuff. The only GPU money can buy in 2020. The GT 710. Terrible card. Terrible, terrible, terrible card. Look at that. 1 gig DDR3, not even the DDR5 version or whatever. It is just a total piece of absolute garbage. But it's passively cooled. It's modern. It's got VGA, DVI, and HDMI out. And that's all I need for really what I'm doing in my server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Titan. This will do nicely in its stead. Next up here, we got a Noctua branded cooler. Don't particularly care about branding when it comes to air coolers, nor should you. Mounting interface is pretty much the only major difference between brands, and to be fair, Noctua's is pretty good. They also have pretty good fans, and they also make a lot of 2011 V3 coolers, which is why we went with them today. This cooler is 4U rack mount compatible, which I thought might be important in this chassis. And if we take a look, as we can see, I'm holding it right about where I think it would sit. That seems like a pretty good level. So it'll be here. Probably could have gone with any other tower cooler. Looks like it can go up to about 180 millimeters, I would say. So yeah, but I wanted to be safe, not sorry. Odd though, they don't give you a splitter for the fans. Noctua, come now. What's with that, huh? Really? I see that there's an envelope of stuff in here. A box within the box, if you will. So maybe I'm not giving them credit when credit is due, after all. Ah, I see fan stuff. And there's a Y splitter in here. Okay, I take it back. Wow, there's a... We got a Y splitter. Very nice. Thank you, Noctua. We've got low noise adapters. So these are basically inline resistors, which I don't think we'll be using, but they're very nice. All blackout. Like that Noctua's changed to blackout for those. That's very nice. Deceptively underfilled, I'm sure, tube of their thermal compound, which I'll probably use on this. They make decent thermal compound. But for anyone who was wondering, thinking that it was such a good value, oh my god, they give you a whole tube of thermal compound. No, they don't. That's what they give you. So, joke's on you. Looks like they're giving you a lot, but really, it's just cheaper for them to use one syringe type. And yeah, this tube is most of the way empty when you buy it. So, contrary to most modern cases on the market, this case does not have all the motherboard standoffs pre-installed. They're in this bag. This is the mesh edition because of the mesh top panel, which allows a mount for a 200mm fan. 200mm is one of those really odd fan sizes where there technically is no standard for the mounting holes spacing. So you can run into a lot of scenarios where you'll buy a 200mm fan for one of these and it won't line up with the holes. And sometimes, and this is where it gets real bad, is I've seen it where Cooler Master cases don't fit Cooler Master 200mm fans. It can be a real hassle to find a properly fitting fan for a 200mm mount. Something to keep in mind if you're planning on populating it. You've got a hex to Phillips adapter. Always nice to see those. Of course, all of our hex posts, which are imperial thread, not metric. And a few metric screws. Let me take a look here and see which ones we're going to need. The center one has that nice rim that can chew up the back of your motherboard, but also can make lining it up a breeze. And it looks like they've also included a top one that has that rim as well. And that's very nice. You know what I might do, actually, is I might move these to the corners, because then you'll have perfect alignment every time. And that's actually really nice. Off to work.
This isn't interesting.
I'd like to point out that this case has pretty nice feeling threaded holes. Not all of them are the same, which is what's really the pinnacle. You can get all of these holes for standoffs feeling the same. Makes you very, very confident that you're not stripping the threads. Some are a little tighter than others, but they all feel smooth the whole way through.
This isn't interesting.
And that's our standoffs installed. Should be ready to place the motherboard. But first, let's mount the cooler. It's typically easier to install coolers before you put them in the case. It looks to me like it might already be set up. Would you look at that? Nothing more we need to do? It came set up, ready to go out of the box. We will have to remove these fans in order to access the screws, but with exception to that, it is already perfect. Wow, this does not flow nearly as nicely as MX4 does. We had far too much paste. So I think I'll go for what I like to call the percent. This cooler uses hex for the tension screws. Okay, Allen key. It's just a bit of a pain when everything in your system typically is going to be Phillips, and then you have to switch over to hex.
This isn't interesting.
Unfortunately, the memory slots are very close to the socket. This has benefits for overclocking and whatnot, but it can be a bit of a pain when it comes to cooler compatibility. So that's a bit of a shame. Kind of hoping to get away with it, that it would just narrowly squeak in, but it doesn't look like that's the case. I think we might be ready to insert the board. No, you know what? We're not. Because we can also install the M.2. So that'll be going right here. Nice and simple. The screw is usually included in your motherboard box. In the case of this machine, obviously because this is a used system, I've simply just kept the screw in its desired post.
This isn't interesting.
My philosophy is always have an M.2. You'll never lose the screw, and they're cheap enough that I think these days they make a lot of sense. But wait! What am I doing? I'm not going to install my motherboard into my case when I can instead install my motherboard into its tray. And again, part of the reason why I moved those two headers with the rims, the little lips that keep the board in place, is that now the rest of these should all be perfectly lined up, and I could, theoretically, tighten all the way around as I go. I still like to leave them loose, just in case. You don't need to go super, super, super tight on the standoffs. A little tightness is good, that way screws don't back them out. But overall, you don't have to go Rambo on them.
This isn't interesting.
These appear to have metric threads. Oh, well, that's confusing. This whole time I thought... yeah, I thought I was using Imperial. But these are Imperial standoffs with metric threads, as I was hoping they weren't. I'm noticing now that all of these typically metric threaded screws, or sorry, typically Imperial threaded screws appear to be actually metric, I think. My motherboard is now installed in its tray. No worries there. And we're ready to install the tray in the system. Or are we? We're not. Now that the tray is done, we're going to instead install the screws to the power supply.
This isn't interesting.
That's perfect. Okay. So our tolerances here for our cables are very tight in this area, which kind of sucks. But this power supply is too big for its own good. I blame that more. I mean, technically I don't blame it on anything. This case just would benefit from a smaller power supply. For anyone playing at home thinking about getting this case.
This isn't interesting.
GeForce 9800 GT, a fucking legend, great card. BFG, not so good of a company, but yeah, you don't see one of these very often, but this is a legend. Very good card. Single slot as well. I like it for server applications, but unfortunately, not UEFI compatible. This, on the other hand, is a Titan X Maxwell. This is about equivalent in gaming performance to a 980 Ti. It is blower style, meaning that it doesn't really add a whole lot of heat to the case. We are officially ready for motherboard tray installation.
This isn't interesting.
Now, I don't know why you would ever use that, because then you're going to have to take all these cables out to go up into the system. So I'm not planning on using this little cutout, but it's a nice inclusion, I guess, if it's more of a permanent system build. But this way I should be able to just unplug the cables, pull the tray, and that'll be it. AC97 plug is absolutely useless to me. I don't own any motherboards that use AC97. So I'm just going to snip the leads. Excellent. All right. I think that'll do it for now, unless you guys really want to see it, quote unquote, turn on. Okay, we are back. The plan is essentially to have a drag race. So we'll try and click them at the exact same time, as close as we can within human error. Here we go. So right off the bat, the Ryzen system has beaten it to the punch, the Xeon system. But my word, the Xeon system has a substantial thread count advantage. And I'd say it's anyone's race at this point, but I have a suspicious feeling that the Xeon is going to take it here. Get our hardware readouts back. We can see our CPU package on the Xeon is currently 64 average, 76 maximum, current of 76, whereas the AMD is an average of what looks to be 64.9, current of 82, which is no surprise. System being overclocked the way it is, it'll go as high as it can. Just looking for whoever's score pops up first. It looks like the Ryzen finished and just kept on going. So yeah, it's running again. Looks like it's set to repeat. Same with the Xeon. So we'll start with the Ryzen desktop. So our rendering score was 12,910. And if we head on over to the Xeon, 11,486. That's honestly a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. I mean, the Ryzen still edged it out, and obviously when it comes to single-threaded, it's no contest. I'm not even going to bother running the test because it should be obvious that if something with less threads is beating a system with almost double the threads, you know, that should make it pretty clear who's going to win in the single-threaded arena. But yeah, I mean, check that out, man. The result speaks for itself. If you need roughly a 5800X worth of performance for something like rendering or whatever the case may be, you can pick up one of these Xeons for $280. Now, as I've said in the past, the trick is the motherboard. Getting those X99 motherboards that are, you know, actually not super sketch. There are some remanufactured Asian ones that take the server chipsets that I assume these CPUs come out of and repurpose them onto more consumer-oriented boards with modern features. You know, whether or not you can trust those, that's up to you. You know, some of them apparently are fairly good, some of them not so much. But yeah, if you have an X99 platform laying around, you're looking for a cheap upgrade to be able to compete in multi-core score, $260 is pretty compelling right now, considering the price of and availability of other alternatives. So yeah, I think we can conclude that this machine build was a pretty good success. I can't wait to take this thing out on the road tomorrow and do what I need to do with it. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to check out this this whole build log with me. It's been a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you again, and we'll see you next time.